Welcome, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to our conversation ever since we decided that we are going to have the session here, and eagerly looking forward to learning from you and understanding how music can help us reduce stress, manage anxiety, and improve our mental well-being. So, a huge welcome to you. We will get into this very important topic, but first, I'm really keen to understand who Mark is. Tell us, what is your story?
Thank you very much. Well, it's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to lots of new people. So I'm Mark Deeks. I'm known on my social media as that piano guy because piano is very much part of who I am. I played piano since I was 5 years old. It's as automatic to me as breathing, and I'm very poor at other life skills, but piano is okay. That's something that sits well with me. So piano has always formed part of my life. I studied for exams and then ended up teaching. I was teaching piano at 15, and I quite quickly ended up working as a professional piano player and teacher and musical director, and found myself working, surprisingly to me at first, in community choirs and community singing groups. So my business has kind of ended up being in two main areas, either working as a piano player and a performer, or as some kind of musical director and arranger, and working on various projects as a freelancer over the years. So yeah, I'm music through and through, and I've always had a passion for including people and helping people and trying to make just bring them into a musical world and let it help them in so many ways that I know it can. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Mm, how amazing. Is this what you always wanted to do?
Um, I don't think I ever really considered anything else. So because it was just so automatic to me. So because I was playing piano at such a young age, I think that when you go to, if you go to any kind of college or university to do music, it's sort of kind of assumed by that point that music is probably something that you would be interested in doing. Um, I sometimes joke that musicians try to become a rock star first, then become a teacher when they can't. They realize they can't, or that they're unable to do so, or they decide they just want to settle down and have an easier life. I kind of did that in reverse. So I became a teacher first. I was a music lecturer in my 20s, um, and then became freelance afterwards, and have ended up joining a reasonably well-known heavy metal band and doing my own metal projects. And so I've kind of done, yeah, I feel like I've done it in reverse. I'm a rock star in reverse, although I'm not a rock star. But yeah, I did the teaching career first, and then now been a completely freelance musician for like almost 9 years. So sort of a traditional musician's career backwards.
Hmm, very interesting. That's very interesting. Do you remember any of the highlights of this career? I know you've had a great career, so tell us a couple of things, really interesting things.
So crazy things. So I once did a performance at Carnegie Hall in New York, which is often thought to be one of the sort of ultimate wish list venues for musicians to play. I was on tour with the Inspiration Choir in New York, and we got to play at Carnegie Hall, so that was really cool. Um, I've worked with people like Faye Tozer from Steps. That was really cool. I've run choirs for the BBC. Working with Gareth Malone was cool. I gave Lenny Henry, the comedian, a piano lesson once. That was really cool.
Ooh.
Uh, Joined a reasonably well-known black metal band. So there's all kinds of. I like to keep it varied. That's my passion. I arrange heavy metal music for orchestras and choirs sometimes. So yeah, I like to keep my musical career varied, and now I'm really passionate about my community choir work. My community choir is called Sing United. We've got 150 singers, and yeah, so it's nice and varied. I like to. I don't like to play the same style of music every day.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you come from a family of musicians?
No, not at all, really. So my granddad could play piano a little bit. He used to sort of play piano in church. My dad can find his way around a few notes, but strangely only in one key, which is kind of like a musician's language, and it's a really unusual key as well for people to learn. So he can't read or write music, but can sort of find his way around a little bit by ear. My mum tried to play a little bit when I was a child, but then gave up when she said I was better than her when I was 6. So that really upset her. So, but I've managed to get my mum back into piano playing in the last year or so. So, no, not really. Sort of people who have dabbled a little bit, but no real history of musicians.
The reason why I asked that question is, do you think that there are people who are born with musical genes and there are people who aren't? So you either have it or you don't.
So yes and no. I think that music is like anything. We kind of all have skills and abilities that we're good at. Some people are good with maths, and some people are good with logic, or leading, or whatever kind of skill or empathy we have. All kinds of different skills and practical skills and emotional skills. So I think there's an element of that. Yeah, naturally, I'm pretty good with music, but it doesn't necessarily feed into other similar practical things. So, for example, I'm quite spatially unaware. I get lost quite easily. I'm absolutely awful at DIY. So, practical skills of how things fix together or connect. I I don't know if it's dyspraxia or something, but I have real difficulty in that kind of thing, which is weird because, of course, on a piano, my fingers are moving very quickly, and it's a physical movement, and there's a lot of dimensions involved. And so, yeah, I think that people will have a natural inclination towards perhaps some skills and not others, but I don't think the kind of classic things that we get told. Sometimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, I can't sing a note," or "I was told when I was a child that I was tone deaf," or "My fingers are too short to play piano." I don't believe those things. I think there are a lot of myths around getting involved in musical hobbies, which is kind of what I talk about a lot, in that there are a lot of barriers that people have had in their way, often for many, many years, lifetimes, which has stopped them accessing something they would love to be able to do, not necessarily professionally, but just for joy. And so I think there's a yes and no. I think people have a natural inclination to be able to do something perhaps professionally, or to a skill that would allow them to do it professionally. But I don't necessarily buy into a lot of the things that people tell themselves that they will never be able to do just for joy.
Mm. That's so beautifully explained, Mark. Thank you so much. Yes, in my language, I choose to call them inner stories, and inner stories that we have practiced for so long that they start appearing as the truth. But as you said, we may have inclination for certain skills, and all of us have inclination for one skill or the other. But other than that, it's a matter of commitment and showing up and practicing and honing our craft.
Absolutely. Well, so one of the things I teach my clients who do the online piano work with me is that I don't like them to use the word practice. I tell them not to practice the piano. I tell them to play the piano.
Oh
And
wow!
and
Tell
the
us
reason that
more. Tell
and
us
the reason that it's such an incredibly powerful mind shift is that if they were wanting, if their aim, if their goal, if their piano why, if you wanted to use that kind of coaching language, if their goal was to become professional piano players,
yeah.
then I would want them to practice. It would frame everything differently. I'd want them to play different things on the piano. I'd want them to practice different techniques. I'd want them to spend different amounts of time doing different things. It would set a different framework for absolutely everything. But I don't teach anyone who wants to become a professional piano player.
Yeah.
I teach people who are, for want of a better expression, regular adults who are a bit stressed, or have always wanted to play piano, or have a normal, whatever normal is, job, or have a busy family life. They have commitments, and they need 15 minutes just for them. They need an unwind after they've put the children to bed. They need something to do instead of meditation, or as a companion to meditation. They need something that forms part of their soul. It's just joy. It's just pleasure. It's a hobby. We're not trying to create them an ability to go and tour the world as a concert pianist. And so I tell them to play the piano, not practice, because it's a completely different mindset. If I wanted to become a professional athlete, I would train differently to me and my wife arguing about whether we can be bothered to go for a run this week because we just don't really like it, but we know it's good for us. It changes everything. It frames everything, what the goal is at the end of it. So, I tell them not to use the word practice. You're going to play.
That's really interesting. And while you were speaking, I was drawing analogies to my work, and I was thinking, yeah, that's so true. Because I work with coaches who use storytelling to build their business, and not because they want to become professional storytellers. So yeah, they shouldn't be practicing storytelling. They should be telling their stories.
Yeah, just do it
Yeah.
and then get better at it.
Yes. 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 Thank you for bringing in that clarity, Mark.
All right.
You earlier mentioned about the myths that a lot of people have, and I'm sure I also have some of those myths. So tell us what are the typical myths that abound in the world of music, and help us bust some of those myths.
Well, this is kind of why I wrote my book. So I have a book called Not Another Piano Book, and people assume that piano books are this is how you play the piano. This is where you put your hands. These are the notes you should play. These are the exercises you should do. And towards the end of my book, there's a little bit of that. But the majority of it is here are all the reasons you've told yourself you will never be able to do this. And here are all the reasons why they're just not true. So the classic ones for piano are I'm too old to play piano. That's usually one of the most common ones.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're not. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just silly. That's something you've told yourself. You've come to this conclusion without trying it. Well, that's nonsense. I once had a client say to me she didn't think she would ever be able to play piano, or it would never be accessible to her because she didn't play as a child. Well, that's extraordinary. She'd lasted 50 years of wanting to play the piano, and concluded, without any fabric of evidence, that she wouldn't be able to do it because she thought it was something she had to start as a child or it was off the table. Well, that's just not true. Perhaps if she had wanted to have a career as a piano player, yes. But she had a career in something else, and now she was in her mid-50s and wanted to do something for herself. So I'm too old is a common one. I've got clients in their 80s, so let's just get that one straight away. We have I don't have time. That's probably the most popular one. I don't have time to play the piano. And again, I say that's framed in something that you've been told or you've concluded that learning piano takes years. Well, it takes years maybe if you want the skills necessary to make a living out of it. So then we just return to this basic principle. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to have something which allows you to switch off for 15 minutes instead of watching another news program or watching something on Netflix. You're not trying to become... I think it's because as adults we map out what we think is possible in comparison to a professional all of the time. We see people at other stages of a journey. We see people at other stages of a skill set. This classic example of mapping out someone's day 1,000 against your day 1. And we do it in all kinds of fields, in business, in our personal lives, in our health. And so the comparison I always give is the running example. Myself and my wife took up running 3 years ago, not because we desperately wanted to, certainly not because we wanted to become Olympic athletes, but because we just wanted to get a bit fitter, maybe lose a bit of weight, feel physically better, spend some time together, feel mentally better, get out in the fresh air. And all of these benefits that have come regardless of the fact that if we compare ourselves to an Olympic athlete, we're still rubbish. We're better than we were 3 years ago, but we're still rubbish. But we've had physical benefits. We've lost weight. We feel better. We feel a bit guilty when we don't go. But the kind of ideas that we map out against professionals is unreasonable. So when an adult says, I don't have time to play piano, my response is, yes, you do. Because I don't want you to play for hours. I want you to play for 15 minutes. If you wanted to become like your favorite musician, be it Coldplay, Billy Joel, Elton John, whatever piano player you love, then yeah, you're going to have to spend some time. But if you want to be able to pick your way through a basic version of an Elvis tune after you've put the kids to bed, then you don't need hours. Therefore, you do have time. So it always comes back to the classic examples of I don't have time, I'm too old, I have two fat fingers. No, rubbish. People think they've got two fat fingers. Who decided that? Where has that nonsense come from? But then also things like playing an instrument will cost thousands of pounds. No, it won't. Not if you know what you're looking for. There are loads of ways to get a cheap instrument. Or I need loads of space in my house to play piano. You don't. Get a little keyboard, stand it on its end when you need the space. So there are all of the things that people have spent their lives telling themselves are just not true. So that's why I get really passionate about that.
Oh, wow. That's so beautiful. And what you especially said about comparing ourselves to people who are professionals in our field, I think that is very, very important. I'm reminded of such a big aha moment that I had a few years ago. So I got into coaching 5 years ago, Mark. I used to work in the corporate world before that. So very secured corporate employee. That's how my life was. And I left corporate world obviously at a certain level because I had been building that career for a while. And when I set myself up as a business owner, I wanted that success and that level like this. And
Exactly.
obviously, in the first few months, probably 6 months, maybe even a year, I was so busy beating myself over it. And then suddenly it occurred to me, I don't know what the prompt was, what the stimulus was, I can't remember now. But suddenly it occurred to me, hold on, you are comparing yourself as a newbie in business to where you were a seasoned employee, somebody who had spent over a decade building that career. Cut yourself some slack.
Absolutely.
And it was such a powerful moment for me because that was the moment that helped me understand that I could give myself permission to to be kind to myself and to acknowledge that I will do this, and it is going to take time, and whatever time it takes, it's okay. I'm comparing oranges to apples,
Absolutely.
and that was
Absolutely.
just crazy.
As long as it's heading in the right direction. And so there's, what I said before about I tell people not to practice, I tell them to play. Another word that I'm not keen on from my clients is the word still. When they say, I still can't do this,
Mm,
or I can't do this yet, why can't I do this yet? And they've usually been playing piano for like 3 months, 6 months, sometimes a fortnight. I've had people after days go, oh, my left hand's still not doing what I want it to. Well, hang on a minute. I went to 8 years of piano lessons, college, university, 25 years as a pro. There's still things I can't do. There's loads of things I can't do. But you find your way through it. So let's just like map out this it's a process. I tell them to approach it as children approach it, music. So children approach music. If you imagine you're in a hotel or a bar and there's a piano there, and the young child runs over to it and hits it and just gets joy and pleasure from hitting this piano and making this awful racket. The child is laughing and smiling, and the adults are going, please, will someone get that child off the piano? As a professional piano player, I feel that very badly. And so the child is entertained that they can get a noise out of it. The adult, in their head, subconsciously compares it to what they know a piano can sound like. Well, that's not the same thing. So the child has just been sat, because a piano is the easiest instrument in the world to get a sound out of. You just hit it. But the adult has already mapped it out in comparison. And like you say, that's apples and oranges. If as an adult you approach a piano, you have to be able to enjoy the fact that you can play a couple of notes and go, well, look at that. That was me. Like
mm,
a child would. So it's all about this constant comparison, and it can do us more harm than good.
yeah. That's so true. That's so true. And the analogy of bringing in the playfulness just for fun and just because we want to do it and appreciating ourselves for having done that, that's important. That's so important.
Absolutely. So my wife sometimes says to me, because I love football, I will watch football forever. It's my absolute number one switch off. Although my team are awful, I will watch any game of football quite happily. But I couldn't play it. I was rubbish at playing football as a kid, or if I tried to play it now, I'm terrible. But I loved doing it. I loved doing it. I was just rubbish, and therefore always picked last. But it didn't matter. So we have to find joy in these things, and it comes back to this: why are you doing it? If you are doing it to achieve great things, then that frames things differently to if you're just doing it for fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Always be mindful of the purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Before we go any further, I want to share with you that we have a live audience building up. So Jill is joining us from Wales. Hi, Jill. Thank you for joining us. And she's responding to your analogy of when you were talking about a child hitting the piano. And she says they're all the right notes, just not necessarily in the right order.
That's the classic one. That's the
Yeah.
classic one. And it's like when people talk about, do you remember the old comedian Les Dawson? So They say, "Oh, I sound like Les Dawson when I play the piano." Like it's joking. That's terrible. Do you know how hard it is to play like that? To play deliberately wrong? That's a real skill.
That's true. Yeah, that's going to be hard. So, Mark, let's talk a little bit about the topic that we have chosen for today, taking music into our well-being. So, how do we reduce stress, increase confidence, and improve our mental health? Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So, if we talk about reducing stress, first of all, it's kind of impossible to think about anything else at the same time as you're learning to play an instrument or singing. Because, at least at first, often the first physical movements are totally alien. Totally alien. So, if you're wondering about which finger you need to press a key with, you're not thinking about, I still have to do this project at work, or I haven't paid the electricity bill. You're going, why won't my fourth finger do that? So, firstly, if we just think about, you can't think about anything else. You can't worry about anything else when you're taking part in a musical hobby. That's the starting point. So the things that would normally be stressing us, you're not going to think about for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So when we think about the benefits of meditation or yoga or breathing exercises, all these kinds of things, they tend to have a theme about there's something that are trying to get you to focus on you on that moment, not worrying about a bill or something at work or some kind of worry that you have. So if I think about the kind of like the choirs or community singing groups that I've been involved with for many years, I've lost count of the times of people telling me when they've arrived in the room, they've had a bad day at work, or they've got a problem in their family, or there's a health problem, or something's making them sad. And then they sing for an hour and a half because they're just immersed in what's going on. They can't think about anything else. And they go home feeling happy, elated, like emotionally lighter. So then I ask people, well, what could stress reduction do for you? What could it do for you in terms of, this isn't necessarily to just reduce stress, it's the benefits of having that stress reduction. So what could it bring to you physically? What could it bring to your business? What could it bring to your health? Just having something which doesn't allow you to worry and can only allow you to feel good. What could that do for your stress levels? And then what are the spin-off benefits of that? But even if you don't physically partake in it, so it can be the same for listening to music. So you don't have to play. I'd encourage you to try, but you don't have to play. So there's an old concept of deep listening, which is kind of almost like a coaching concept, like active listening, these kind of expressions we hear. So deep listening is kind of like a modern slang now that we talk about, where someone will say, right, I'm gonna get a record off the shelf. I'm going to have my phone off. I'm going to have the lights dimmed. I'm going to have no distractions. I'm going to just listen to this record. I'm going to look at the artwork. I'm going to read the album credits. I'm going to look at the lyrics. I'm going to immerse myself in this music. And, whether you've got candles or you've got some snacks on the go or whatever it is, that's just the same kind of process as we think about as meditation, as journaling. There's the idea of like not having any screen time. Music can perform that role. So in terms of the three things we want to talk about in terms of reducing stress, there are some ideas straight away. Music can fulfill the same roles as we think about as other things that we're now used to talking about in well-being and mental health, of ways of reducing stress. I can talk about the other two if you wish, or did you want to talk about the confidence thing first?
Oh,
Sorry, the reducing of stress first, then we can move on to
oh yeah.
confidence.
Yes. Let's talk a bit more about stress and tell us what more you want to tell us on how we can implement.
So one of the key things I tell people to do is, like I was saying earlier, you don't need to do this for hours a day. This is something which I tell people to do for just 10 or 15 minutes a day. 10 or 15 minutes. So I did a workshop a few months ago called How to Fit Learning to Play Piano into Just 15 Minutes a Day. Because there's one of the barriers straight away. I'll need to play for hours in order to feel any benefit. Well, that's just not true. 15 minutes, little and often, like we would think of if we were helping someone to journal or meditate or do breathing exercises or whatever. Exactly the same kind of concepts, little and often, little and often. So I tell people to, I don't want to rain on their parade. If they want to have fun and play for hours, then great. But let's think of it in 15-minute blocks. So attach the 15 minutes to something you know is going to happen. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to make tea. I'm going to have a bath. I'm going to take the kids to school. Whatever it is, after I've seen my last client, just after I've got in from work, whatever it is, 15 minutes. Attach it before or after that thing. Something you know is going to happen, attach it. Piano is part of that. That is your self-care part of the day. So now it's not a separate thing. Now it's not something else that's on the list. Now it's not something that's waiting to be forgotten. Now it's not a chore. It's just part of that activity that you know is going to happen. And that would be one of my number one tips to make this part of your day and to feel the benefit straight away.
I think that is an extremely powerful technique to implement anything that we want to do, Mark. I love the idea of attaching it before something that will happen. We know it's going to happen as part of a day, or attaching something after, because what most of us would struggle with is finding those extra 15 minutes. But now when we attach our new activity to whatever is going on, then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the things about, setting your alarm 10 minutes earlier,
Yeah.
going to bed 10 minutes later? I've had a client tell me that she thought she was sleeping better after playing piano for 15 minutes a day for a week. That's all. In 1 week, she felt she was sleeping better because she'd found 15 minutes a day was her last thing she did. She put the kids to bed. Now it was her time. 15 minutes, piano, slept better. That's what she reported back.
Yeah.
That's the spin-off, again, like we talked about earlier, the spin-off benefits of that. That's not just sleeping better. That's waking up feeling more refreshed. That's now I'm more focused at work. Do you know what I mean? That's a domino. That's a snowball effect.
Yeah, and I would say we tend to forget those snowballing effects, and the spin-off impact can be so powerful. I know that in my case, I can clearly feel a difference in my sleep pattern and how well I sleep on days when I have exercised or done a bit of yoga or went out for a walk, and the days when I get lazy and don't do any of those. I find it so much harder to sleep, and the quality of sleep isn't as good, which means that my next day gets messed up too.
Exactly.
So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. The spin-off benefits and the continuity of those benefits, that's really powerful. So it's not a one-time thing. It's not a 15 minutes benefit thing.
No, absolutely. It's
It's a
the
long
way
term.
that it then has an impact on the next day and the next day. And I always say to people, don't set unrealistic goals. This doesn't need to be every day. Let's be realistic. We're busy adults. There are families, there are jobs, there are businesses, all kinds of commitments. This doesn't need to be every day. So say you're going to do it 4 days a week, maybe 5. Don't go, I will play the piano 1 hour a day for 7 days. I mean, that's just never going to happen. I wouldn't do that. So I've been playing piano 38 years. So let's be realistic about it. And that comes back to the idea of this child and adult comparison. So adults think that children are the only people who should be told to do something for only a little bit of time. Think about if you wanted to. I mean, I'm not lucky enough to have children, but if you think about the idea of you were asking your child to do some homework, asking your child to practice something or to do some chores, you'd say, just do it for 5 minutes. See if you can do it for 5 minutes. And then when they're a bit older, you would think, now see if we can get them to do it for 10. Whereas adults go, I am an adult. I will be able to do this for 1 hour. No, it's a new skill. It's a new thing. You've never done it before. You haven't concentrated on what finger to hit the piano with for an hour before. Madness. Stop it. Little blocks. Approach it like you would do with a child, and you feel much more benefit.
Yeah, and if it's a new skill, aren't we starting off as a fresher? So
Exactly.
we may be 40 years old in age, but as far as that skill is concerned, well, we've just started fresh as
Exactly.
a child would.
Exactly. And to enjoy the small victories.
Mm.
Because you are not going to go from 0 to 60 overnight. You have to enjoy the small victories. So I tell people, when you can play 2 notes, I want you to smile about it. I want you to stop. I want you to walk away. I want you to phone someone. I just played 2 notes on the piano. Great.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think as adults, we can get caught up in our own ideas, in our own concepts of how much we should be able to do before we'll appreciate who we are
Exactly.
and how far we have come, and it can really get in our way of enjoying something.
Absolutely. And as business owners, how much do we do this? As coaches, I haven't got enough likes on my Facebook page. I haven't got enough followers on Instagram. So I'm guilty of that. I'm watching those metrics, hoping, willing another one to go up. We all do it. So I've like really started to notice every single like, every single follow. So today I got to 150 YouTube subscribers. Great. That was 100 a few months ago, so it's going up. So let's just take these small victories, and all of this can definitely come under the umbrella of, you know, the first thing we want to talk about, which is how to reduce stress using music, because it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot.
Yes, yes. Mark, we also have Jenny, who's joining us from South Africa. Hi, Jenny.
Wow. Hi, Jenny.
And she says, childlike approach. That's a great idea.
Great. Thank you very much, Jenny.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about how music can help us build confidence, Mark.
Absolutely. So this comes down to the simple idea of how it feels, and I'm a massive advocate of this. I always talk about this to my clients. How can we protect how this feels? How does it feel to learn something new? How does it feel to be better about our skills? So I use this analogy quite a lot. If when you were a young child, someone in the playground at school said to you, "Oh, I can do that without looking," they suggest that they've mastered it. They've done something amazing. They're now brilliant at whatever they're talking about. And that feels confident, doesn't it? That feels like a confident thing to say. I can do that without looking.
Yeah.
I then compare it to the first time we drove a car, the first time we moved the car forward, the first time we took the stabilizers off our bike and realized that was me. They feel like really exciting moments, and exciting moments breed confidence. It's like, wow, I did that. That sort of, was that me kind of feel. So I say to people, like I said before, if you can play 2 or 3 notes on a piano, if you can do one simple, small thing, I then want you to try and do it without looking at your hand. And the reason for that is primarily twofold. One, as a piano player, you really don't want to be having to look at your hand. You haven't got time. There are 2 hands. They're too far apart. It's just never going to happen. You'll go cross-eyed trying to see 2 hands at once. So physically, we cannot see everything we need to when we play piano. We just have to learn to trust that our fingers can do things without seeing it. So there's a practical piano player advantage to being able to play a couple of notes without looking. But the other reason I tell people to do 2 or 3 notes without looking is purely down to confidence, because I want them to feel, wow, did I do that? Was that me? Would you look at that? I've played 3 notes and I didn't see it. Now I start to believe. And once you start to believe, now we're talking in confidence. So we just think about the kind of things that we realize that we can now do without seeing them. First time we tied a tie, first time we tied a shoelace. Now we can do these things without seeing them, and we're confident in it. We can do it. And so it's often to do with breaking this hand-eye coordination reliance that we have. And that's what feels good. So then what about the opportunities that can follow? So performing for an audience. So this is now a big confidence thing, because of course many people are scared of public speaking. Don't want to speak wouldn't dream of doing a Zoom call perhaps a year ago, and now a little bit more used to it. The idea of speaking to people about something that you're interested publicly, or getting up in front of an audience and speaking publicly. Now, of course, music often lands ourselves in performances of some description. So with the choir work that I've done over many years, because the choirs they're not professional singers, they're just ordinary members of the public who love singing and come together and sing something because they're passionate about. So here we have people who are probably scared of public speaking, who have sung at Carnegie Hall, or have sung at some other theatres and all kinds of places that I've performed at with choirs. Leeds Town Hall, Sage Gateshead in Newcastle, big performance areas in front of thousands of people. And yet, if you ask them to stand up in front of a room and tell their story, we're talking about telling stories right now, they'd be nervous about that. So music can allow us to feel like we've achieved something, and to feel like we have some confidence. And what does confidence breed? It breeds more confidence. And countless times people have told me that they've played piano for a friend or family. And so now we're talking about a very insular, small performance, even just over Zoom or whatever. And the adrenaline and the buzz of someone going, well, they recognized what the tune was. It doesn't need to sound like a professional CD. They recognized the tune. So a lady who's a client of mine, she's called Debbie. And Debbie said to me, she'd been playing for two days. And she was having a go at one of the basic lessons on my website, which is a lesson on how to play Can't Help Falling in Love with You by Elvis. Now, she'd never played the piano before, but she was just picking her way through. There was an old piano sat in her house, and she decided she was going to play it. She was probably, let's call it, in the second half of her life. Let's not guess how old Debbie is. So she was playing piano for she'd been playing piano for a couple of days, trying to play this tune. Can't Help Falling in Love with You. And her daughter came down the stairs and said, "You're playing Elvis." Now that is a priceless moment.
Yeah.
It's a priceless moment. She's not going to be a professional piano player. She doesn't want to be a professional piano player. But she had achieved something. And the confidence boost of someone recognizing a tune, that buys, that's a great feeling. And then what we were talking about before, what does that snowball into? Well, after she'd finished playing, she probably felt pretty good for the rest of the day. Well, what did she achieve how did she feel about her life for the rest of the day? So this is not just an isolated incident. This is the knock-on effect and the knock-on effect. So performing and achieving something, even for one person or for you. I tell my piano players to video yourself on your phone or just put a voice note on and document what you do. Document it, because then in 3 days' time you go, well, I didn't used to be able to do that. Now I can. Or in 3 months' time, well, now I can play this. So confidence is a big part of music, definitely.
Yeah. I loved what you said about trusting ourselves, trusting that our keys can do the job. It's like cooking and serving that dish without having to taste for everything, whether the flavors are right, whether the seasoning is right, or hitting the live button and going live and speaking to an audience, knowing that, trusting yourself that it's going to be okay and that you can do it.
Absolutely. Well, I always say in terms of performance, and it's applicable to sharing your story live as well, literally what is the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
Literally, what is the worst that can happen? If you make a mistake, or like the dog jumps up on your knee, or he sat on the floor today, he's been good. But if the dog jumps up and things go wrong, what does it matter? Do another one. Do another one. Or just keep going. That's even better, because people want to feel like they understand you. I mean, I've not had the easiest of years in the last year, myself and my wife. So we lost a baby daughter a year ago. My wife was 21 weeks pregnant. And it happened the week before lockdown. So last week was like the first, anniversary, for want of a better word, in a horrible situation. And the story of the unusual medical situation we found ourselves in is something that we felt really, obviously the fact we're hurting, we're grieving, but we didn't really feel like we wanted to necessarily talk about it because it felt deeply personal. And people don't necessarily want medical information. But because we found ourselves in a medical situation that is a bit unusual, and we've found over living through the last year that this is not an area that is really very well known about, now we feel like we want to share our story. Now we feel like we feel like we've got a bit more fire in our belly now. We're a little bit stronger, and we feel like we need to start talking about it because we want to feel like we can help other couples going through the same kind of situation. And so, yeah, people... I was really nervous about putting this kind of stuff online, and obviously my wife and I, we talked about it a lot. And did she feel comfortable with me sharing stuff, effectively for my business? Well, not for my business, like the context of our story. Because I work in helping people to use music to improve their mental health. The fact that I have had mental health difficulties in the last few months, I feel that gives a little bit extra air of authenticity. I feel like I understand now a bit more about what I do. I feel like I've got a bit more fire in my belly to talk about it and share my story. So I think that when you talk about the nervousness of pressing live and just talking, the overwhelming response of me talking about some of the subjects I've been speaking about recently, yeah, people respond well. They're supportive. Because most people are genuinely pretty good people. And if I've already had people reach out to me and say, "Oh, that's really helped me because now I know I'm not alone. I had a similar situation." So, yeah, sharing your story can only lead to good, I think.
Yes, that's one of my favorite questions, Mark. What's the worst that can happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jenny's saying, thank you for sharing your story, Mark.
Oh, thank you. You're very welcome.
I'm just taking a minute to...
Sorry to unload.
No. Yeah. I can only imagine how hard it must have been for you and your wife. And I'm really sorry, truly sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not easy. We haven't got this mastered at all. But, we're a strong couple and we look after each other. And when I've got a bad day, she has a good, and vice versa. We take it in turns, sometimes by the hour. But, that's what a marriage is about, right? So it can be really, really hard. But we've come to the conclusion, both of us, that we never wanted anyone to think we're talking about it for like attention. This kind of sort of worry that you sometimes have about social media. But I think sharing the story lets people know you're a real person. What is the good of letting anyone think that you're perfect? It doesn't achieve anything, because none of us are. None of us are.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's therapy for me. I don't know, but the people connect. And I think had I not been sort of professionally doing something that was connected to mental health, maybe I wouldn't have felt comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't feel any shame about it. I know that myself and my wife, we have nothing to be sorry for. We haven't done anything. It's happened to us. So what's the harm in talking about it? And of course, particularly for men, men in coaching and men in entrepreneurship, and obviously we've just had International Women's Day. It's not like it's a competition, but sometimes men don't feel comfortable talking about their feelings. Yeah. And don't feel comfortable sharing about this, and there's a sort of disproportionate weight of suicides towards men rather than women. So yeah, it's difficult. Wow, we've gone into some heavy subjects here, haven't we? So sorry.
But then music can help with all of these issues.
Absolutely. Well, that was the third aspect, was it not? Yeah. So improving mental health. I think that what's happened to me recently, and this is kind of why I've decided that this is the right way forward, is that historically for my life, I've just always been a musician first. I'm a musician first. Not that, aside from friends and family, but in terms of who I am, music is what I do. I don't think about it. My brain works really fast when I'm thinking about music. I can arrange music. I can play music. I can play by ear. I arrange for choirs and orchestras, and it's almost like I can't keep up with my thoughts. When I'm thinking about music, it's just like that. As I said earlier, I'm fairly terrible at big significant other areas of life, but when it comes to music, I'm cooking on gas. So when it comes to me rehearsing bands or choirs, I'm known for not being a hard taskmaster. I can do it with a bit of banter and with a bit of personality, and I make sure people laugh. But I'm going to work them, and it's going to improve them, so they kind of learn to trust me. But people have always said to me that the musical work that I do made them feel better. They felt more confident. They couldn't believe they were performing in the places they were performing. They felt uplifted, and they were like experiencing the mental health benefits of what I was doing in terms of music. But all I was feeling was, well, this is music. This is what I do. This is who I am. I enjoy it, sure. But this is my work. This is part of who I am. And because of the difficulties of the last year, I feel like now I've got an extra layer of understanding about how music can help and how it can be therapeutic. And so my wife has been going on at me for years to create my own music. You should just do something for you, Mark. You're always creating music for other people, to other people's orders, to other people's specifications, your clients and people who are customers of mine. So I was sort of harangued and harassed into making music just for me. So I recorded an album. I wrote an album just for me, paid a lot of money, went to a studio, hired other musicians. It's professionally been made, and it's done me the world of good. I'm so proud of it. And nobody has heard it yet because, well, kind of, I'm getting other people. I'm not allowed to talk about it yet, but other people are involved in making sure that the world hears it. But I've made it for me, and I could have made other decisions musically and throughout the project that I thought would have satisfied other people or another audience, and I just went no. It's like this. This is the vision. This is how it's going to sound. And if this is the most expensive set of MP3s I ever own, I'm fine. This is how I want it to sound. And the responses from the handful of people who've heard it has been really great. So, even someone such as myself, who's been around music all my life, can still feel that, writing that music, recording that music, putting some soul into that music has done me the world of good. I kind of wish I'd done it years ago, but then my wife's always right, so that's fine.
Well done. Will the rest of the world get to see this music that you're creating?
Yes, it's done. It's recorded. The artwork's done, and later this year, it shall be public.
Great. We look forward to knowing more about it then.
You're very welcome.
Brilliant, Mark. That was some amazing piece of information you shared with us on how we can manage stress, build our confidence, and improve our well-being and mental health. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're very welcome.
Before we let you go, tell us, how can people work with you? Do you have something coming up? How can they get in touch with you and work with you?
Yeah, thank you. So it depends what people are interested in or what they would like to know more about. So I have a book called Not Another Piano Book. You can get that at notanotherpianobook.com. So if you've got an interest in perhaps an easy way to find out if the things that have been stopping you have a go can be easily overcome, and spoiler alert, they can, then yeah, notanotherpianobook.com. That's a cheap and easy way to find out. It's deliberately quite a short book, easy to read. Let's see if we can knock over those barriers. I'm spending quite a lot of time on Clubhouse right now, this new social media audio only app, which I hated the concept of at first, and now I really love. It's making all kinds of interesting connections happen, and we've started a music and mental health club on Clubhouse. So you can find me at Mark Deeks Music on there and find out more. But yeah, I'm on all the channels, Mark Deeks and Mark Deeks Music, and my choir is called Sing United. So that's singunited.co.uk if you want to know more about that. So yeah, lots of places. Oh, I should probably mention my free group on Facebook called Play Piano in 30 Seconds.
Oh, wow. In 30 seconds.
It's slightly misleading, but it's good fun. It just means all the video tips are 30 seconds long. So it's kind of like when Joe Wicks did Lean in 15, where it's just like quick fire, here's something you can do in 15 seconds. Yeah, mine's just 30.
Love it, love it. When we finish, would you be kind enough to drop all your links just underneath this video, please?
Absolutely no problem.
Yeah, so that we have everything in one place and people can connect with you as and
Thank
when.
you very much. Yeah.
Mark, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I
You're very
love
welcome. Thank you for having me.